Hello, my name is John Brown and you're listening to the Obscast.
Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff.
Welcome to the Obscast, the podcast dedicated to Sherwood Observatory, its members, visitors and all budding astronomers. I am Joe Gathercole and I'm at Sherwood Observatory with Julian Best and Steve Smith, who will be giving us his lookup section later on. You may remember Julian from a past episode. In October 2023, he gave us some insight into the history and artefact preservation project that he's spearheading in order to preserve the important historical information contained within the walls of the Victorian Reservoir that's currently being transformed into a magnificent science discovery centre and planetarium right here at Sherwood Observatory. Julian, thank you for being here.
Good evening. It's good to be here again.
Well, it's been 5 months since the release of our last Obscast talk, and even longer since we actually recorded it. The building project has really been moving along seemingly perfectly from my point of view. I know this isn't your remit exactly, so I ask just because I know you've been around here a lot and may know more than most listeners. How's the build going in general?
Well, as you know, the last podcast we recorded it underground just before we handed it over to the main contractors. It was our last chance to get in there in its very raw state, and I'm glad we did. And I hope you enjoyed the podcast that we recorded then with all the acoustics as at that time. Then effectively we left and handed it over to the main contractors who have been very, very busy on site, literally from day one as soon as they landed. And now, just last week, they've poured the concrete slab, which is a major step forward for us, where they've been busy on the roof of the reservoir itself, and now they've literally laid 350 tonnes of concrete just last week, which is still drying, because obviously concrete takes a while to set, so no one's been really running around on top just yet. Obviously, I had the drone down there last week, which was authorised to fly around, so we've captured some of the workings laying the concrete, which was quite interesting to see. And it's moving ahead at pace. So we're very excited that stage has now been poured, and looking forward to the steel frame going up. I think it's the next stage. So that'll be very exciting to see, because you'll be able to physically see the level going in, and then it will just literally take off from there. So it's all going well, the looks of it.
Excellent. What was it like being there when 350 tonnes of concrete were poured on to create? It sounds simultaneously really exciting and really boring. Just somewhere in between.
Well, I mean, I wasn't actually on the physical site, because they needed a clear site for all the movement of lorries and people, so we weren't interrupting the physical lay itself. I was watching a lot of it from our actual dome, from our telescope dome, because it's quite high up and it overlooked the site. So I ran some time-lapse cameras from there, which you get a good view of them pouring it. And once they started, it just kept going. They did not stop. It looked a very professional operation. Literally concrete lorry after concrete lorry, and laying the concrete out, and then using these special vibrators to make sure it's all there's no air pockets, and then spreading it out and finishing it off. And I think they finished roughly about 6 o'clock. I think they were prepared to go all night. At one stage they brought some lighting units in, but fortunately come about 6 o'clock they got it all up there and all laid, and I think they were pretty happy with it.
That's not bad going, is it? I mean, once you get going, you've got to keep going.
You have
concrete.
To keep going.
You can't just stop and carry on tomorrow.
You can't stop, no.
Yeah. So you said the next stage is the kind of frame going up on that first floor. Do you know what stage we're at in terms of the build? Is everything
well, as I came in tonight, you can see that they've literally started to take some of the prop work down of the slab that they've just poured, and that looks quite exciting in itself. Just now we can see the concrete slab literally solid sitting there. So I'm not quite sure exactly when the steel goes up. I think it's imminently in the next few weeks. Watch this space, as they say.
Okay. Something I know about this build that's personally important to you and to a good few of us is the cafe area. Is the coffee machine going to pass the Julian Best coffee test?
Well, I have been updated by the project manager on the coffee machine, and we may well be getting a decent coffee machine. I'd like to think it may or may not be down to my coffee needs and my promises to thousands of people that I've shown around there over the years, promising them, not only a fantastic presentation in the planetarium and fantastic displays and shows we're going to give them, but I've also promised them decent coffee and decent cake. So we've got to live up to that. From what I've seen, the suggestions and ideas that we may well get a decent coffee machine. So when it opens, do come down and tell me if the coffee's decent. If it isn't, I'm afraid I can't give you a refund. But we've got to have a decent coffee offer, in my opinion, and I hope we will do.
Excellent. For the whole build, we have a camera filming the building process on a time lapse, and we've been getting some updates from our curator of instruments, Chris Dakin. The footage we've seen so far has been in small increments, but still fascinating to see. And the whole completed time lapse is going to be astounding. Do you know if that's going to be viewable as part of a visitor experience in future? Maybe with some of your own drone footage inserted?
There is talk of. We've got plenty of wall space in that reservoir. It's what 20 odd feet in 75 feet, in internal diameter. So our maths experts can work out the circumference area. There's a pretty lot of wall space to put exhibitions on. And I'm sure we'll come on to in a minute the history project that I'm dealing with, which will take up a little bit of it. But I would like to think that we will have some kind of project display in there of the build, because it's a very significant build, and it was very important that we built it. And we've been going on about it long enough, so why not show people how it was built? And it's all part of the STEM offer with the engineering and science and things to show the physical build of it. There is suggestions and talk of putting some panel monitors in there, which you can literally put anything on there. And as Joe says, the time lapse cameras, there's now 2 time lapse cameras. The second one just went up the other day from different angles, so we're capturing the whole build now on 2 cameras, along with the site manager. He's been droning away almost every day, I think, and I've been up droning as well when I can. So between us all, I think we should have some quite good footage to be able to display on these monitors. And I think it's quite a visual thing to see, the conversion, because it's not just a we dig a ground and we build a frame and we put a roof on and that's it. We're literally converting a disused underground reservoir where you literally see it exposed, and just exposing all the brickwork was impressive. And then obviously we put this slab on it, which we've just poured, and now the steel frame will be going up shortly. So, and all the groundworks as well. It's been completely remodelled, the whole site. As you mentioned, Chris, our curator of instruments, he transposed an old photo that he took to a new photo from the same angle, and you can see the progress already, from a derelict site with a pile of bricks on top to now a smart, smooth concrete slab and a quite a busy construction site as it is now, and that looks impressive. So when the steel frame goes up and then the rest of the build, it's gonna look fantastic, and I think it'd be quite interesting to see the progress of it, whether we do it as stills or as a time lapse or as a combination of both with drone flights and all the rest of it all mixed in. Then I think it will look pretty special, actually, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Can I just interesting, something occurred to me. You talked about that cement, 350 tons. How many cement wagons turned up on that day? Because it's quite a feat organising that. Do we know?
I think, was it about 30, wasn't it? I think it was 30. About 30 odd, quite a few. I didn't physically count them, but I think the plant was local, that they were batch mixing up. And once they started about 9:30, I think it was, because it was a bit cold initially first thing, and you can't lay concrete when it's too cold, obviously. Once it started, it kept going. I didn't count them, but it must have been 30 odd lorries, all carefully managed on site.
It must be a very well-timed operation, because it needs to keep going, doesn't it, once it's started?
From what I understand, they brought a team in just to lay the concrete, and that's what they do.
Okay. Oh, well, brilliant. Well, so if we go on to your actual duties on the historical timeline. So last time we spoke, you had a timeline of Reservoir's history, but it was a bit incomplete, and you weren't sure of when it stopped being an operational reservoir, as well as some of the other information I know you were hunting down. Has any light been shone on not just the last few years of operation, but the whole timeline of the reservoir's life?
Yes, well, exciting times, because as part of our National Lottery Heritage Fund sponsored history project, which is separate to the actual main construction itself, part of that project was to employ a professional historian to just dig a bit further to see if there's anything that's out there that he can possibly dig up. And he's been doing an awful lot of digging, believe me, and it wasn't in the mud this time. It was in archives, and he's had to get access to the archives, and that's what he does. So, and we have actually found out some more information, Joe.
Excellent.
I mean, I've got the whole list here, but I won't read through all of it because it goes on a bit. But in essence, the demise of it was later than we first believed.
Oh, okay.
It was very worth digging out this information. So it all centres around the last decade or so, when it was ran by the Central Nottingham Water Board, because it was all part of different bodies and authorities, and then obviously, Severn Trent has come along, but it closed before Severn Trent took over the local water supply. So, and all these archives of all these different boards and authorities have been located in different places, or not kept, or whatever.
Yeah.
So our historian's been digging around and following lead after lead after lead, because he's gone to place and they said, oh, actually, such and such might have them, and these archives might have them, and he's gone digging, and he was very excited. He sent me an email with it attached, and I thought, oh, here we are, bingo. So we've managed to find out on the records of the Central Nottinghamshire Water Board, who took charge of our site, reservoir site, in 1963, which is, I think, probably a bit later than we thought that such a body might take over. And at that time, it says in the records that a new water main was laid to the reservoir, which came into operation in 1965. And then a couple of years later, I think because of more modern communications and more modern control, electronic systems came into effect here. And then we found out in 1969 that some surface boosters were put here, and new submersible pumps were put in as well, which probably explains why the pipework that we found when we inherited the reservoir was very complicated, and we can never quite work out what it all does for just if it was a simple reservoir where water came in and water went out, there seems to be an awful lot of pipework for nothing we could explain. So we've not been able to find schematics of the reservoir, which is a shame, but finding out that it had all these extra booster pumps and submersible pumps added starts to make sense of all this pipework that was going on there. And then we started to discover that in the early 70s, the reservoir basically became a standby reservoir, because new reservoirs were coming on stream, and they didn't need this one so much. And then we basically find out that basically in 1972 to 73, the electronic systems here were basically taken offline. And then in 1973 to 74, the booster pumps were removed and the reservoir abandoned. So 1974 is the date we believe it became completely abandoned, which just coincides with roughly the same time as our founder members arrived on site to start work on the observatory, which is right next door to it. So effectively, the reservoir lot left and our observatory lot arrived. Probably almost passed in the driveway.
So does it correspond in a way that, because was this land that the observatory is on in use by the people running the reservoir at the time? So that would make sense that it came up for sale at the time they were abandoning it for us to purchase this piece of land.
Yes, I mean, obviously it was all one site with the water board, and I don't quite know how it was split and all the legalities of the purchase of the land occurred back in the early 70s. But what I can probably imagine is that they were offered just this initial site where the observatory is, because you wouldn't at that time need or be able to afford that the rest of the whole site. Mm-hmm. You just wanted a little bit of land to put your observatory on, they offered us this parcel, and we went, yes, we'll have that, thank you very much. And oh yes, there happens to be a reservoir over there where that's, we don't need to buy that, or might make a great future aspiration in the future, but at the moment we can only afford this parcel of land. We'll go for that, build our observatory and see what happens, and obviously, as we've discussed at length, they built this fantastic observatory here on this parcel of land. And then in 2014, as if you want to know the whole history of it, we explained it at length whilst underground on our last podcast. So in 2014, that parcel of land where the reservoir became available. And fortunately, our members at the time and the committees decided that it'd be worth investing and buying it at the time, just to stop anyone else buying it and using it. Because if anyone else bought it and built houses or whatever, there was obviously there was no suggestion they would have been built there, but potentially you never know what's going to happen with land. It could affect our operations here, but fortunately we were successful in purchasing it then, and then since then the plans and ideas and suggestions have all come together, and here we are now. As I said in the last podcast, here we are now just about to start. Well, we started and we're literally going ahead, all full steam ahead, and we've laid the concrete slab, so there's no going back now because we've spent quite a bit of money already on it, so you're not going to stop, hopefully. And it should make this fantastic facility to support, and in addition to the current observatory that's here. So we're all on one big site as one big association, effectively. So it would be... happy days.
Well said. No, that was very interesting.
Yes.
And I understand you're on the hunt for more information.
Yes. There's only so much a historian can do, and believe me, I have regular meetings with him, and he's been doing an awful lot of digging, and we found some of this information out. They obviously because they didn't have smartphones back in the day, so there's very few photos, and there's not much sort of local. Even anecdotal evidence of its operation. So what we are certainly keen to discover is anyone who sort of basically worked at the plant in the latter years, 60s, 70s, or was involved in its decommission, or know someone that knows someone, etc., to get in touch with us. And Joe will give you the details in a bit, how to get in contact with us, because we want to at least tick that box to say we've done it. Because if we're going to put some press releases out as well locally, just to try and see if there's anyone to prompt anyone's memory, or yes, I know such and such down the road work there or something, just to tick that exercise, because it'd be a big shame if we put all this presentation and exhibition together and we do it the best we can, and then someone comes along and says, I worked here and I've got all these photos and we've got all this information that we haven't been able to put into the project. At least if we tick that box to say we've done it, then we can say, well, so be it, but at least we've tried. So some press releases are going to go out. As I was being invited here to record this podcast, I thought, well, we'll include the shout out as well, because we don't, this podcast goes out to the public arena as well. So yes, I mentioned in the last podcast about, we'll come on to this in a minute, about if you've got the bullcock in your loft. Well, no one's come forward with the old bullcock yet. So there we go. So I'll come on to that bit in a minute. Yes, whoever if there's anyone who worked at the reservoir or was involved in the decommissioning in the sort of late 60s, early 70s, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
And we'll have the email for that at the end of the episode.
Yes, we will.
Excellent. Well, you've not just been chasing down the history of the reservoir, you've also been on a mission to make sure the remaining physical aspects of the original building are well preserved. If I remember correctly, the Society was awarded funding from the National Heritage Lottery Fund. Is that for the historical timeline and preservation of artefacts?
Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning, we were lucky to be awarded a separate fund to all the other funds that we've got to build the planetarium and Science and Discovery Centre, a small amount of funding to effectively do some research, which was what we're doing, and put together a history project. And they were very keen for us to preserve the artefacts that were left in the reservoir, which again please do listen to the last podcast because we discussed that at length. But the valves that were left in there, which were very important artifacts, were lifted out, and a local engineering firm has been working on them. The latest from them is they've all been cleaned up, and I've seen some photos of them all clean, which is quite remarkable because the last time I saw them they were caked in mud, well, along with many members caked in mud as well. Again, listen to the last podcast. But we've all cleaned ourselves off, and the valves have been cleaned off as well. And the ladder, we've recovered a section of the original ladder that was used, so that's been recovered, and that looks quite nice. So, as part of the funding is to preserve them, so they'll be coated in a durable coating to preserve them further, because they are metal and they will rust, and we want them to survive for future generations effectively. As I mentioned, the ball valve, we haven't been able to find the original one, whatever reason for. So we're going to make a replica.
Okay.
We found some. We haven't been able to find any photos at all inside our reservoir, which is probably not surprising. I did some research and I found a reservoir very similar age to us, and it looked very similar in operation, and the valves looked very similar on the Isle of Wight actually, and it had some ball valves attached. So we've got an idea of the size. It's probably about a football size, and we believe it was made of copper. And one of these photos does show a copper, effectively a football size ball valve on the incoming valve. So we're going to make a copper effect ball valve and have it attached to it. And then once that's all done and they're readily available to come back, they will come back to site, and they'll be mounted and shown to the public, because it's all part of the presentation and the project. It'll have an interpretation board, because the project's all about interpretation, explaining what everything is, what it does, and all the rest of it. So, we'll have the ball valve on the outside with this copper effect float attached to it with some interpretation, just to draw people to the building, and so they know what they're going into, that they're going into a reservoir. They see the valve, it draws them in. Hopefully that they're going to come and see a fantastic show in the Planetarium, and obviously has some fantastic coffee and fantastic cake and all the other fantastic things we offer. But they will go downstairs and into the reservoir themselves, because why would you not want to go into the reservoir? And then you will see all the displays and everything we're no doubt going to put in there. But a section of it will have a couple of the valves, the other valves as a pull factor to go over and have a look. And it will have some panel displays of the information we've managed to find, and how water was supplied through the ages, as all part of the engineering and science offer. We'll have some interactive displays. We might go all high tech, and part of the monitors that we're going to put in there, to put an interactive monitor in there, because everyone likes pressing buttons and things, or touch screens. If we incorporate interactive monitors with software running on it, we can change it, update it, put whatever we want on it, and we can adjust it to who's coming in. If we know a specific group's coming in, we can adjust it accordingly. And if we know a certain age groups coming in, we can adjust it to them.
Well, we're always trying to promote STEM subjects here, and all of those are going to really get people excited when they come here. Especially the artifacts are certainly going to promote technological history, engineering history. There's math in everything. We're in a dome. That's mathematical. That's great. I mean, everything sounds like it's going to come together really well and be a really good experience for people when they come and see. The one thing that I know got people excited on the preservation side of the project last time was kind of the preservation of what we know now for the future, and you were planning a time capsule. Initially said that it was going to remain buried in the centre of the floor, so about 2085. Is that the same sort of plan now?
It's that kind of project that I think should have a time capsule. I mean, you probably wouldn't bury a time capsule in a car park.
You just bury King Richard in a car park.
That's true. That's very true. But if you're building a supermarket or something, you probably wouldn't. Not much history to bury it in a Lidl's or something, or other supermarkets. But I think because of the history, we've converted it. It's changed, and there's a lot of history of the society, a lot of history with the reservoir, and combining, time capsules is all time and science and technology, and I think it all merges together. I think, well, why not bury it in the central bit? Because that kind of makes sense, because, well, it's already dug out. I mean, I know it's going to be filled in, but we can allow a section. I don't want to start digging floors up. And it needs to be in the reservoir. There's no point burying it outside. It needs to be in the reservoir itself, because that's what it's all about. And we're thinking of, as I said last time, we don't want it just to be a box of rusty water when it's opened. But the idea was to open it perhaps at a key date, and a key date in the future that we can come up with that's not ridiculous. We don't want to make it sort of 1,000 years. One of the key date we think is 2086, which is 200 years of when it opened. So it was built roughly 1885, and it opened in 1886. And we believe from historical records they had a big party down there. I say party, I think they had a grand banquet down there. So why not replicate that at that time in 2086? And if we get youngsters today involved in the time capsule, things like I have also run this past our schools lead, and I've sounded them out because we want to involve the local schools, because you would. Why not come up with ideas like what do you think technology is going to be in 2086? Are we going to be living on Mars, for example? I'm sure people have mentioned flying cars, as everyone always does. My prediction or wonder if we will have working by then is fusion power, because that's been talked about for God knows how long now. Will we have a commercial fusion plant running in 2086?
It's 20 years away, isn't it? But it always has been.
It's always
the joke.
Yeah, that's the joke. Yeah. So the local schools can get involved with that, and then hopefully, in why not have it opened at a key date, which is 2086. And I'd like to think that those children of today will still be alive. They can come back, perhaps have a party down there, open the capsule, and see if the predictions were right. Yeah,
and it's a good outreach tool now, isn't it? For now, to make more people aware that of what we're doing. If we go to the schools and let all the kids know, this is happening. What do you think? Should go in there.
And if I say Blue Peter can do it, we can do it. But hopefully, it won't be a rusty box of water when it's opened. So we're also thinking of ways of being able to store things till that date. We're just not going to put bundles of paper in there, because I don't think that will last. So we're probably going to digitise things and store things on media.
Oh, this will be nice to put an Obscast in there.
Yes, why not?
A few from this year that people could listen back at and think, what the hell were they talking about back then? Because we've proven all that wrong.
Make an exclusive one for 2086 that no one can
Very
hear until
good.
2086.
Our predictions for 2086, and you could say
We do another Obscast on all this. And what we would like to future people to listen to.
Yes.
What we might waffle on about.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, Steve. What a good idea. Because we're looking at ways of storing long-term media, whether we use optical discs or thumb drives or whatever. I mean, we are just starting to think about that. So again, if anyone is an expert in time capsules or long-term digital storage solutions,
we'll have to store a laptop in there with USB ports on it that all they need to do is power up, perhaps.
Well, I certainly think, just like the Voyager probe that was launched in the 70s, that's got that gold disc on it, and it's got instructions how to play it. Well, as part of it ticks all the boxes for science, technology, engineering, and maths, doesn't it? About how to play these discs. But I think we'll have to have several formats, not just rely on the one. We put some thumb drives and some. I've done some research, and there's some longevity discs you can put in there. But will you be able to play these discs in that time?
Exactly, on your nuclear computer.
Exactly.
I think mini discs will have made a comeback by then.
So we will have to put instructions in there how to play, or why not use the cloud? because I just think some of the bigger name cloud providers would possibly still be available, or that data forwarded on to new providers.
What else is going in the time capsule then? Has anybody considered that?
I'm probably going to form a mini time capsule committee, Steve, because anything that's going to go in there will have to survive, because I don't want it coming out being a rusty box of water like Blue Peter's ones have done. So how have we store the digital media? But I don't see why we can't put physical objects in there.
Yeah, I think physical objects is good.
Again, how can we seal those? How can we protect them? How can we stop? Because we're going to assume it's still going to be damp, certainly under the ground. It's the base of an old reservoir, so we can't guarantee it's going to be 100% dry.
They're digging bombs up at the moment, Julian. £2,000 bombs, etc., and £1,000 bombs that have survived since the last World War.
Well, that's true.
They're carting them off to sea to a safe distance and blowing them up.
Yeah, fortunately,
if you're looking back in time at the moment, so
don't
restore a bomb and display
it. When we
don't
dug
mention bombs.
When we dug the sump out, we did thankfully we didn't find any ordnance in there. Thankfully,
is there any way the time capsule could be like a safe buried into the floor, so when they do want to get to it, they just have to unlock it and open it rather than dig through the floor?
Yes, I don't think we're not going to physically bury it in concrete. I think it would be with a plate over it and bolted down, and then like a fire hydrant where there's like a H on the wall and it says it's so many feet away and down sort of thing. Because then you want people to be able to see it and think, not with a plate on it, not to be opened before X or opened on X, so that it's a talking point rather than just buried out of sight, because it's all part of the offer.
Maybe it could be in a wall, so it would be off the damp and up somewhere. Then it would be out there. Anyway,
so the Planetarium was still forging ahead at full speed in all those years.
We'll have our launch facility up by then.
Yes. Because another crazy idea I've got all these crazy ideas, is again all part of the technology and science offer, is because we're going to predict. Well, 2086 is a definite date, or a defined date. So why not count down to it? So, it could be a project for universities and colleges that we are associated with, a design project to have a clock that counts down. I mean, as Steve just alluded to, there's clockwork mechanisms in World War II bombs that are potentially still viable. So, I mean, I'm more thinking of digital and electronics, to be fair, rather than mechanical. But why not have a countdown clock that we set off when we sort of bury the time capsule to the we can define I'm sure we know the exact date or near date of that banquet. Countdown in seconds until when it opens, and we can look through, we can forward the calendars to see when a suitable time would be, and work out the number of seconds sort of thing, and then literally count down years, days, minutes, seconds if you want. Why not electronically?
I'm just worried that if somebody in the future closes the planetarium down and somebody moves in, then they'll find this time capsule with a countdown
I think it's a bomb.
I think we can put a ticking side inside.
What are we going to do with this?
Well,
what have we disturbed?
Yes. Well,
and there's a digital countdown, and it says something like 3 hours 26 minutes.
we'll all turn up as really old men, and then we'll all be cordoned off.
Yes. We say no, don't cut the red, white.
The planetarium will be dragged out to sea and sunk with some explosives wrapped around it.
Yeah, I think we'll have to carefully label it in very carefully label, just like the Voyager probe. It's all in gold in the disc, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they've come up with the special symbols for nuclear waste, haven't they?
Yes.
So people avoid it. We could do something like that.
Yeah, our own symbol to say it's inert. Yeah. It's an inert time capsule with a countdown clock. But anyway,
it's a lot of effort for someone to find an old episode of the Obscast.
Well, it's got to be fun then to open it after all that. There's got to be something in there that's going to be really intriguing.
But it's got to be technological, or part of it technology, because I would like to think 2086 we're going to be even more advanced.
Yeah. Something like the Dead Sea Scrolls, papyrus, no?
Could be. we could do some cave drawings on the wall, couldn't we?
Yeah. On the inside
So
of the...
anyway, that's some part of my crazy ideas to have a countdown clock, because then you've got to think of it's got to keep going. It's got to have backups because the mains isn't always going to be there. It's going to have backups and more backups or certainly sort of like a non-volatile memory. So if the power does go and you power it back up again,
Or a very large candle.
or a very large candle, or a very large clockwork mechanism that we've just wound it up once.
Yeah, something we wind up every month came to my head. Someone would forget.
Yes, but
I'd forget my turn.
Yes,
Ruin the whole
exactly. So could that be a design project? I don't know. If you've got any ideas,
I think it sounds good.
That'd be good to ask the schools and
certainly ask the universities to come up with a perhaps a design so
foolproof countdown mechanism
that has to have backups and has to keep working, or at least maintain that countdown in a non-volatile memory. So because the power will trip at some stage, I'm quite sure, but it's got backups of backups that will then restore the countdown that is accurate as well.
And if any members want to have their input heard, you said you're going to start a time capsule team or committee?
Yeah, possibly.
So,
perhaps an informal little committee just to sort of give us ideas, and we can discuss it and how we're going to preserve all this data that we talk about, what we're going to put in there. It's not going to be very big, I shouldn't think. And then bring it to fruition, really. So why not?
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything you want to add about the project that we've not covered at all?
I think we've probably covered most of it, really. What we're doing, why we're doing it, the shout out for anyone that's got any memories or worked there. I can't believe anyone's going to fax in some photos to us, but if you've got some photos in that loft next to that ball valve that you haven't got, there's the last shout out for that ball valve in the loft. If you've got it. We're very excited of the whole build, let alone the little part that I'm doing with the project. I'm sure we will update and have another podcast recording on the project in before we open, which is hopefully November time. Who knows? We might get special access to go back in there before it opens, or certainly on the new level. We could record a podcast, Joe, maybe? Yeah,
well, on the last episode we did together, you gave me an audio tour of what it might be like to walk in. I want the actual tour recorded next time.
Yes, well, we'll be doing plenty of those. An audible walk-through. Yeah. How about that? Where we literally describe what we're coming in through the doors and on our left is, and not saying a last podcast where you will come in on a mezzanine floor. We are coming in on a mezzanine floor, and we are physically going down. And blimey, where's all the mud gone?
I'll finally find out what a mezzanine floor is.
Yes. Well, there you go, Joe. It's all part of the science and technology offer. And where's all the mud gone?
Yeah.
Which would be it'd be nice to go in there without getting muddy.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, before we finish, I want to thank you not just for coming on, but for taking on this project, because you're a volunteer, just like everyone else who does everything here.
We all are, yes.
And we want to once again ask people for help, because Julian and the people helping him with the preservation of the building's history are doing a fantastic job, but they can only work with the information that's found or presents itself, and this is where we want to ask people to come forward. We're looking for any information about the reservoir's working history, especially during the period of the 60s and the 70s. If you were in the area, worked at or knew someone who worked at the reservoir on Coxmoor Road, or had any association with the reservoir during that time at all, then please get in touch with us at communications@sherwood-observatory.org.uk and help us preserve the timeline for generations of visitors in the future. Thank you once again, and we'll take a break now. We'll come back with Steve Smith's Looking Up section.
Hello, this is Steve Smith with my monthly Looking Up Obscast. I do the monthly Looking Up articles in the EH to inform members about some of the many seasonal objects that come around each month. I have learnt that it is important to have a list of objects ready for the next observing opportunity. Your list may include galaxies, open star clusters, globular clusters, double stars and nebulae. The planets and our moon do their own thing, so you need to check up what's up there at the time you want to observe. There's always plenty to see if you are aware of what is currently up there. If you have had a successful observing session, I usually write an account of the session, listing brief details of what I have seen and any thoughts that occurred to me at the time. It is good to be able to look back on these sessions and share observation with others. So if you have a good viewing session, why not write it up and email it to the Society's Event Horizon magazine to share with your like-minded fellow members. Okay, it's March. The start of March sees astronomically dark skies persist from around 7:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time at the beginning of the month. By the end of March, astronomical darkness lasts from around 10 o'clock at night till 4:30 a.m. Also, Sunday, March the 31st, sees British summertime begin. So, fingers crossed for plenty of observing opportunities. And what are this month's highlights? Well, Mercury is at its yearly best in the sunset sky from 10th of March through to the end of the month. Mighty Jupiter is still available in the early evening sky, though it gradually sinks away into the western twilight by the end of the month. But it's spring galaxies galore, as constellations Leo, Coma Berenices and Virgo fall nicely within our reach, providing dozens, if not hundreds, of galaxies for us to ponder on. Also, Ursa Major, or the Plough, is still in prime position this month, allowing us the chance to view some great objects and popular targets, like M101, the Face-on Pinwheel Galaxy, and M97, the Owl Nebula. Also in Ursa Major is NGC 3184, and another galaxy, M106, lies nearby in Canes Venatici. There are 3 comets available: Comet 12P Pons Brooks, Comet 13P Olbers, and Comet 62P Shuchinsan. I can't say it, but whatever. There are lots more details in my Looking Up article in the EH about these 3 comets, and also about some of the things I will now briefly mention. So we move on now to the Deep Sky on show. As always, last month's items are still around. At opposition on the ecliptic during March is the constellation of Leo the Lion. It is an easily recognisable, magnificent constellation. The head of the lion looks like a backward-facing question mark and is also known as the sickle. Leo's first magnitude star, Regulus, is the dot in that backward-looking question mark, and it is the 21st brightest star in the sky. Denny Bowler is part of that constellation too. It is the lion's tail and is the second brightest star in Leo. Now this star is worth noting because it can come in very, very useful when we are trying to locate the spring galaxies. They lie just to the left or the east of Same. Algebra lies in the Sickle asterism, and it's one of the best double stars in the sky. Lying 126 light years away and shining at plus 2.2 joint magnitude, this pair of golden stars are a treat to see through a small scope. Their separation is just 4.8 seconds. Last month I covered the fabulous Leo triplet, which consists of M65, M66 and NGC 3638. If you look at these on often, you'll get to remember these numbers. However, this triplet is still well worth a look at every opportunity. It is easy to find, so it makes a good starting point when having an observing session. The Leo triplet will be available over the next couple of months, but close by is another fabulous and easy Leo target. It's a second triplet of galaxies, and they are namely M95, M96 and M105. There are diagrams etc. in the EH Looking Up which shows you these galaxies and how to get there. Now, the true field of view, or TFOV, required to get all 3 of these galaxies in the eyepiece view is quite large at around 1.75 degrees. Now this may be beyond your setup's combination of scope and eyepieces, but you can easily fit M95 and M96 into a 1 degree TFOV. So soak in the view and then just nudge it over to M105. That's 3 galaxies, wow. Furthermore, right next to M05 you may notice another slightly fainter edge-on smudge of a galaxy called NGC 3371. I personally spotted NGC 3371 quite by accident a few years ago whilst I was admiring M105. I was actually trying to see some structure in it. Well, this other galaxy just popped into view and I looked it up to see what it was. It was a wow moment for me and had me buzzing for days. Another fine target in Leo is galaxy NGC 2903. It is an object suited to both images and visual observers. It lies close to the Lion's Mouth and around 1.5 degrees south of the plus 4.3 magnitude starred Altair. NGC 2903 shines at plus 8.9 mag and may even be observable in 10 by 50 binoculars as a faint smudge. I love those grey smudges. A 3-inch to 4-inch scope will show this particular galaxy as an oval-shaped mottled halo on a moonless, good-seeing night. The sky in and around Leo is teeming with spring galaxies, particularly in the Virgo and Cobra Berenices area. You should be able to see faint smudges of galaxies wherever you point your scope in this area of sky. You often find yourself having 2, 3 or even 4 galaxies in the same field of view. Now that's a lot of stars. Markarian's chain is a fascinating string of galaxies bang in the middle of the Virgo spring galaxies. This curved line of galaxies is a great challenge and a thrill to observe, especially if you want to see loads of galaxies in one night. I have visited Markarian's chain on several occasions and you can easily count over 30 galaxies in one night session if you visit this galaxy-rich area of sky. If your scope is not a go-to, the popular start of the chain's galaxies are M86 and neighbouring M84, and at magnitudes plus 8.8 and plus 9.1 respectively, they can be seen and found rather easily by pointing your telescope almost exactly halfway between stars Denny Bowler at the tail end of Leo, which we mentioned earlier, and also Vindimiatrix in Virgo. M86 and M84 will easily show up in the same low or medium power eyepiece and can serve as a good starting point for observing lots of galaxies in the Virgo cluster, including Markarian's chain, the main feature in this area for me. If you do take a trip along Markarian's chain, and I won't go into all the details, then I suggest you start at the southern end of the chain at M84 and M86, then just galaxy hop slowly northwards and westwards, i.e. next in the chain is a pair of galaxies known as the Eyes, and so it goes on. All the details are in March's Looking Up article, but the Eyes, they do look spooky. This challenge is always a wow experience for me. I hope you decide to take a trip along Markarian's chain. No doubt you will also spot lots of other grey smudges in this area. Please let me know how you get on. There are many more details about these areas in the EH's Looking Up. I also mention what is happening with the planets, etc., and I have listed recommended objects for this time of year too. Again, it will be good to hear from you about any observational sessions you may have had, or we can have a chat about any of this stuff when we are up at the OBS on any wonderful Wednesdays, etc. So, are you now ready for Looking Up? This is Steve Smith wishing you all clear skies and lots of wild moments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for listening to this month's episode of the Obscast. Just a quick reminder for members, there is a talk on Wednesday the 20th by Nigel Cunnington, our chairman, who will be giving a talk on radio astronomy and its future within the Science Discovery Centre that we're currently having built. And on Tuesday the 26th of March, Dr. Julian Onions from the University of Nottingham will be giving a talk titled Crazy Interstellar Rockets. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time on the Obscast.